Hello, my lovelies. I'm Jenny O, the author with no last name. And this is Jenny O Talks, the part of the channel where I talk about things in the creative community. And today, I want to talk about copyright and fandom. So, uh, one of the things that the WGA writer strike gone about is about how adaptive intelligence works can't be copyrighted because they're not original IP, as they are being drawn from all sorts of things across the internet and across, they don't know where they're getting this from, so they can't copyright it, basically. And they want these AI generated works to be treated not even like as source material. Like, they can't even treat it like Wikipedia. They don't really want to deal with this artificial intelligence stuff, and the absolute insanity it would bring towards copyright, um and how writers get credited for things. So I think that's a kind of a mixed up gist, but that's the gist. So there's been kind of this thing floating around for a while, this kind of attitude, especially because Mickey Mouse is coming out of copyright. I think that's a real bad faith argument, but people have been talking about how copyright is bad and how it needs to be ended or severe limitations put on copyright. And particularly, there are people who feel that it is stifling creativity and that fandom writers should be able to monetize their work. And this is a really weird kind of universe for people to be living in. As an author and as somebody who's written both fan fiction and, a lot of fan fiction and original fiction, and I pull a lot of of my ideas of original fiction, from public domain, from, just random things I like, because for me, that's kind of like research. Why not? It's, if you're taking from one person, it's stealing. If you're taking from lots of people, it's research. So I like to pull on a lot of different ideas I've seen, and I like putting them together in hopefully new ways, or, even if it's in some sort of tried and true done way, I still want to put my own stamp on it, and I still want to make a twist, and it's a lot harder than to do, writing fan fiction. And um and you see this a lot too, revolving around talking about AO3 and how on AO3 you're not allowed to put up Patreon links or Ko-fi links, because if you try to make a profit off the fan fiction, it kind of goes against what AO3 stands for as a non-profit. But this kind of thing that I've been seeing, this concept that creators are afraid of other creators, is a little weird to me. Most creators have a very weird, if they haven't dabbled in fanfic themselves, or they haven't dabbled in using things from the public domain, like say using Sherlock or Dracula or whatever, or fairy tales, they have very weird ideas of what fan fiction and what fandom is like, yes, and they might have some weird proprietary ideas of how they want their characters to be treated, but they're not really afraid of fandom writers coming up and stealing money from them, basically. Um, and it's just kind of one of those, it's more of a logistical thing. And the reason why copyright was created in the first place, because creators, we don't really want to have this huge burden of marketing, publishing, distributing our stuff. That is completely out of our wheelhouse. We can write hundreds of thousands, if not millions of words, but you ask us to market them or, the very simple question, well, what is your book about? It's like deer in the headlights, terror, Woo! We don't we don't know how to do that. We don't want to do that. We don't want to have that burden of having to own our own printing press and bind the books and create covers for the books, things like that. So for copyright for us has always been about the publisher and making sure the publisher keeps up their side of the bargain. It's never really about fandom. And part of this is, I believe, the way fandom has evolved over, the last 50, 60 years. From fanzines to things like fanfiction.net and the kind of successor to fanfiction.net, AO3. The way Tumblr works and the way, just the way fandom has grown because in part of copyright laws and interactions that traditional published authors and fandom authors have had with each other over the years. Everything from the debacle with Marion Zimmer Bradley, I can say that, and how she was soliciting short stories for an anthology, and she ended up finding a short story which had the basic plot of her book, and she tried to contact the author and was like, I'll pay you $500 and give you a little byline on the copyright page, and the author was like, oh no, I want my name on the front of the book with yours and part of the royalties, and Daw went, no, we're not dealing with this, and shut the whole thing down. Which led to these rumors that she'd been sued, which still swirl around today. And then, authors like Anne Rice and Anne McCaffrey running around throwing little DMCA notices everywhere during the early days of the internet, which led to, I'm just playing with this, disclaimers, please don't sue me, it's, I'm not trying to make money off of this, which eventually led to the Organization of Transformative Works and, AO3. And just the way things have grown. And there's a few reasons why, sitting here from my original author's kind of point of view versus a fandom author point of view, we don't really worry about this. Okay? I'd be more worried if you stole my books flat out and, tried to sell them on another website instead of trying to, instead, if you were writing stories about my characters and publishing them online, it's just kind of like, really? And trying to make money off it, be like, really? You're trying to make money off of something I can't make money off of? Okay. I'm glad you like my work, but this is a little weird. So the first thing is really quality. Writing quality. Writing a fan fiction and writing an original fiction, or even writing a fan fiction to the standards of original fiction, is like, I don't know, apples and oranges. Or maybe it's more like apples and turnips, okay? It's two very different things. When I first was like trying to decide whether or not I really wanted to write original fiction, I was really, really, really happy in my little fandom bubble because I was kind of like the small, big name in a tiny fandom. And, I could put out virtually anything. And even if it didn't have a conflict, people really liked it. I mean, I'm not going to say I was an astounding writer, but, back in the late 90s, there was like this Sporking website, and like one of my fan fictions got put on the Sporking website, and the reason they were sporking it was too short. The chapter was like 2,000 words, and they wanted it 8,000 words, and I'm just going, are you crazy? It was between 1,000 and 2,000 words, and they wanted it to be longer, and I'm just like, There's actually no rules when it comes to chapter length, but you do you, I guess. Moving on. You know, it didn't stop me from writing. I just thought it was, like, really, really weird that you would you would care so much about my story concept that you're going to a Sporking website to go, it's too short, I want more! You could just leave me a little comment and say, oh, it's too short, do you have more of this story? Please post more of this story. I've been, like, much happier than go to a Spork website and go, it's too short. Well, okay. But when I started trying to transition from fandom to original, I had to sit there and really think to myself, I need to know if I can do this first. So I took one of my fandoms, I believe it was X-Men at the time, and I decided to try to write a fandom story in the style of an original work, where, you know, I don't presume the reader knows anything. And I think the first one was like 110,000 words or something like that. I was like, oh, I can do this. Nice. Yay. You know, but it was a very different process than, you know, writing a fandom work. And the biggest part of it, you know, there are things that writers could learn from fandom. I mean, getting right to the meat of the matter, other things like that. And, you know, not over-explaining stuff. You know, we don't have to explain electricity. Electricity just is. So let's not worry about explaining your magic system. Magic just is, type of thing. There was the biggest, and I think the hardest thing for a fandom writer is description. And I have read a lot of fanfiction, even oodles and oodles of fanfiction of different fandoms. And the one thing that, you know, there is a lot of great fan fiction out there, and I mean that, there is. But the one thing that even great fan fiction often stumbles on is description. Because they assume you know everything, so they don't feel they have to describe anything at all. So they, you know, they might do some, you know, like character descriptions of what the characters are doing, but they're not describing the physicality of the characters or the physicality of the locations. So it's, you know, it's a completely different thing to think about and how to do it without sounding like purple prose or sounding like stage directions or a list. And I still have a hard time with it sometimes, you know. And so we don't worry about that because of, it's just, there's a difference in the writing quality. Even really great fan fiction often stumbles on that, okay? And it's just, if you, like, try to file up the serial numbers and just change place names and people, your story is often going to still need a lot of work because it's still kind of got that foundation of fandom, the fandom in it, and you have to replace, you know, if you haven't put that foundation of work and description and world building into the story and explaining things, then your story's just gonna crumble without putting that foundation back in. And it's kind of, it can be tough. You know, it can be tough. So even if you're just taking like a fandom story that you wrote and you want to make it original, you're still gonna have to be adding a lot of work to it to make it up to that quality of standards, okay? So that's why a lot of, we just don't worry, because we know that your writing might be great. It will be great writing, but your writing will be better if you start getting it up to the original, you know, to where you're putting in the world building and the description. And that is something you're probably going to focus more on if you start writing original work versus fandom work. Okay. And okay, so the other reason is, if you're writing a fandom work and you want to try to sell it, that means the fandom you're trying to writing for is so big that it has a fairly large demand that, let's just say, there's probably some sort of expanded universe that's licensed writing, or there should be. Harry Potter, for instance. There probably should be an expanded universe of books for Harry Potter, but there isn't. Star Wars has an expanded universe. Star Trek had a huge expanded universe back in the day. Like, every single Star Trek episode had its own book. Trekkies had it really good. And then they would have excess books, books that never had episodes for, like, just random plot lines that the corporations had come up with. They were like, oh, we want to have this type of thing going on with Picard. And the, TNG crew, write this book. Find somebody and write a book about it. Write a trilogy. Dragonlance had its EU. So there were sections in the bookstore that were just licensed fiction. I spent a lot of money on the Star Wars EU, and then they tossed it all out. And then I'm like, I'm not getting involved all over again. Oh no. But the thing is, once you start trying to write like a fandom thing and publish it and sell it as a fandom thing, then you have to start worrying about little things like character consistency and continuity and timelines and, not creating these massive leaps in technology or plot holes or things like that, which are expanded universe problems. Like, for the Star Wars expanded universe, for the first, from the 1970s to when he sold it after the prequels, that was all overseen by George Lucas. He would say, I want a book written for this era. You would write some sort of precept for it, a plot line or whatever, and submit it. And he'd be like, okay, but you have to remember that this is going on here and this is going on here, and so if you're going here, then Coruscant has been under attack and is in rebuilding, and or just things like that. You had to remember all these little details. So when you start thinking about, creating this kind of, fandom is writing books and selling books, are you going to end up with like a Marvel multiverse, or are you going to find, or is the copyright holder going to be like, okay, we need to organize this, and we, make some sort of continuity, or make some sort of timeline, set up some character consistency. And the thing about fandom, and what I read a lot in fandom, and I'm reading, when I'm just scrolling through it even, is a lot of fandom works are very, very just peripheral to the actual canon. So it's, going to be very difficult to create any type of expanded universe off of a kind of fan fiction thing, because a lot of fandom works are going from a specific episode forward or a specific book forward, or they're working off of, spite, hate, I don't like this specific thing from canon, so it's just, a fandom is too diverse for, any sort of licensed expanded universe to work outside of like a multiverse setting. So you're gonna start having if you like have a fandom and a copyright holder or trademark holder that's like, oh, we're okay with you doing these type of expanded universes, then they're going to be like, they're still going to want control. They're still going to be telling you what you can and cannot write, and what, it's not going to be the same idea of a fandom experience at all, type of thing. And when fandom people talk about this and say things like that, it just feels like we have reached this point of capitalism where people are so desperate to survive. They want to monetize everything. And that kind of really goes against the spirit of fandom. Like, fandom is a hobby. Fandom is something you do because you love it. And sure, maybe you can write some, you know, you want to make this D&D kind of expanded rulebook or whatever, and you can do that, and you can, you know, because D&D has that special license and whatever. But if you were going to be writing, you know, a D&D fanfic, you know, just, there's so much of it out there already. You're going to have to be really, really, really special to have people want to pay you for it. You know, okay, maybe E.L. James has entered the chat, but that would be like another rant about who E.L. James actually was, what she did, and how she did it. Okay, in this very, very special time of fandom. So, and like, there are people like, well, you could get some sort of publishing deal through fandom, and I've only heard of that happening once. I know like one author that has gotten a publishing deal through fandom, and that's because the agent was, I guess, reading on their off hours some sort of fan fiction, really liked it, contacted the fandom author, was like, do you have anything that you could write that's original, so I think I like your writing, it's really good. But that's kind of like a unicorn thing. It's the exact same way that Bridgerton got a TV show. The producer was really, you know, reading books on their spare time, and you know, liked romance books, and they really liked these books, so they, you know, put together a pitch, and they approached the author to option for a television show rather than the other way around. It usually happens the other way around. It's a unicorn thing. The Martian was a unicorn thing. You know, you hear about all these exceptions to the rules, and you get your hopes up and the hype and everything, you know, after and all that. It's just, we don't have to monetize everything, and you getting a traditional publishing deal out of this is probably going to be a very, 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 very tiny chance of it happening. So, you know, and a lot of things that they want to, big fandoms that you're trying to, you know, create fan works off of, whether they're from TV or, you know, comics or from actual books. Because let's face it, outside of Harry Potter, we don't have a lot of really big book fandoms. Maybe Lord of the Rings counts, but like, they get really, we also got really, really big because they also have movies. So a lot of the things that, you know, people want to make money off of in the written type of stuff isn't even that same type of media that the original canon was in. So, you know, plus you get to learn marketing, and you get to learn publish, you know, how to format books and how to create book covers, which leads us into what will probably be the real issue rather than copyright. Trademarks. Trademark dilution. You are far more likely, if you try to publish anything fandom, whether it's Doctor Who, MCU, Sherlock, it's in BBC Sherlock, not Sherlock Holmes, anything that's currently under copyright and not in the public domain, up to and including Steamboat Willie, you are going to be hitting trademarks, not copyright. A lot of people don't realize this. Not only are things like books under copyright protection, my book has copyright protection just because it exists, okay? And I could pay you some money to buy a copyright thing through the... There's a specific place that, you know, you can buy your copyright thing protection from, and, you know, and which if you want to do if you have like a movie deal or a comic book deal going through, okay? But also, you know, you can also go to the Federal Trade Commission and you can copyright things. So I could copyright my, or trademark things. So I could trademark this particular font, and I could trademark the words heavens, heathens. and particularly in this particular font, like the back of the book, okay? So I would have a trademark of, this is my trademark of Heaven's Heathens, the name, in the specific font that I created in Photoshop, okay? So if I went online, and I had a trademark for those, okay, and I saw you were writing a book in my universe, but you were also using my font and using the name Heaven's Heathens for your part of your series name, I would take you for trademark infringement. I wouldn't bother with copyright. I'd skip straight to trademark infringement. Because trademark infringement is a lot more teeth. Because I wouldn't want this font, and if you can figure out how I made the font, I mean, font, whatever. I wouldn't want this font to be used on all these books that have, like the Heaven's Heathens name in them if I'm not writing them, because that means you do it too much, it would the trademark would fall into the concept of the public domain, and I would lose control over it, and I wouldn't be able to make money off of movies, comic books, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So, trademark, so if you publish something in fan fiction, and you're like, oh, I'm going to use the Doctor Who logo because I wrote a Doctor Who story and I'm going to publish it. And you do that, you're going to be hit with trademark infringement and the DMCA for copyright. But you're going to be sued for trademark infringement because somebody owns that Doctor Who logo, and they own the IP that the Doctor Who logo is representing, and they don't want that to fall into the public domain because they still want to license their own books, or they want to license their own other TV shows and toys and stuff off of it. Now, every single category has a different trademark, so you would have to buy books, and you'd have to buy movies, and you'd have to buy toys and everything, trademarks in them. But my point still stands, is that we don't want our stuff to fall into the public domain, because then anybody can use it, and publishers and movie companies and stuff do not have to pay the creators the original IP. We want to get paid because publishers don't want to pay people. And this is the only way we can get paid. Okay? So, honestly, copyright doesn't keep you from being creative. It actually can make you more creative. I mean, yeah, you can get a lot more attention for probably a fan fiction than you can for an original work. But that original work that you put out is going to make you think a lot more and a lot harder than writing a fandom work. Believe me, it's like two entirely different sides of your brain. And working on original work is exhausting sometimes compared to writing a fan fiction. Like, I can write 2 or 3 times as much fan fiction than I can write an original work, and have my brain feel the same amount of exhaustion. So copyright is not keeping you from being creative. You are keeping you from being creative. But so, like I said, and I've repeated over and over, that copyright is not about other creators, really. It's about publishers. It's about corporations and CEOs not wanting to pay original creators, and we have to be able to prove that we own the stuff so that they will pay us. That if we take them to a court of law for breach of contract, that the law will be on our side. So, copyright, yeah, maybe it's too extreme. Maybe the laws are too, long and year-wise. Maybe we should be thinking about, how long things are under copyright, and, how copyright can be passed down to, to estates and stuff like that. But it's never, ever been about really censoring people. It's especially not in this day and age when you have this ability to put your voice out anywhere. Like, if you want to write your fan fiction, put it on AO3. If you think you can get money to put it, people pay money for it, put it behind a paywall on Patreon. You know, you can do that. But you're just gonna have to learn to market and learn to distribute. That's all. Anyways, I've gone about this for about half an hour, so take care of yourselves. Bless, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.